All right, so study for the biology exam. We're just going to go through the main things you need to know for this year. I don't have the actual test in front of me, so I'm not just picking out the stuff that I think is the most important for the test. But we're just going to have a quick skim through these things. It might help you, it might not. We'll see how we go. All right, so if we start with features of living things, page 46. Now this is page 64, so it's on here. All right, 46, features of living things. All right, you need to know what living things have. Okay, living or non-living, and this is the list right here. I'm not going to read it all, but you can see here it talks about is it made up of one or more cell? Is it able to move? And the answer has to be yes to every one of these. See, look, if the answer to each criterion is yes, the object is living. So that's what that's talking about right there. Classification methods in page 47 to 50. As you look through here, classifying living things. And this part really doesn't really matter. This part doesn't really matter. Really, that doesn't so much matter. This part is starting to get more important now, the Linnaean classification system. And that's all got to do with basically leading what we have today. He was the father of organizing things in that. And you can see that is the study of taxonomy is linked with classification. It's the same thing, really. It says here, taxonomy, the science of classification and naming living things. Okay, so that's part of that idea. And was it 47 to 50, wasn't it? To 50. Really the core of that, like taxonomy, knowing that matters, knowing that Linnaean classification system matters, but the core of it comes into play more here with the 7 levels of classification. But as we've told you, it's actually not 7 levels of classification, it's 8 levels of classification, because domain comes first, followed by kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. So, in addition to that, you need to know what the domains are. Now, they're not listed here, and these are the kingdoms. These are they're right here, but they're just in different things. They used to be in kingdoms. You have plantae, which is plants. That's a kingdom now. But the domain actually is this one, archaea or archaebacteria, bacteria, and eukarya. Now, eukarya actually is the name for these 4 here. All right, plantae, animalia, fungi, and protista are all kingdoms within the domain of eukarya. Eukarya is EUK area. I think that's how it's spelled. Eukaryote, but that's what it's all about, because that's, there goes eukarya, and that is the domain of having, cells each with a distinct nucleus within which the genetic material is contained. You don't need to know all that, but it just links back to this: plants, animals, fungi, and protists. All right, so you should know those things. You should remember your thing, like your poem, to remember these, like does King Paul come over for Glenda's stew, whatever, but you need to know these 7 levels of classification. So that was 50 to 54. So that goes through that. You don't need to know, you need to know that species are closer related than things that are like family or whatever. So if you look at the levels here, 1 to 7, or really 1 to 8, whatever's level 8 species is going to be closer together. They're going to be more alike than things that are on the same level 3. Okay, that's how you got to remember that. They're more alike as they go further down, less alike as they go further up. And that's what it is. Yep. So we'll go through that. Then we didn't talk about this, but you need to know that a species, as it says right here, a species is a group of organisms that is capable of interbreeding and producing fertile offspring. Fertile offspring. Babies that can have babies. something you guys forget sometimes. You need to have, that's what a species is. A horse and a donkey are not the same species. They can have a baby together because they're the same genus, but the mule, which is the offspring, cannot have another mule. They cannot have babies. So don't just say they can make babies. That's not true. The same genus can make the same babies, but they can't have babies who can make babies. Fertile offspring is the way you want to say about it. That question is going to come up in the test. I can tell you that. So we're moving on then, or moving backwards really, to food webs and chains. That was the other chapter we were doing. There you go. And it's talking about page 71 to 73. So if we scroll down here, 71 to 73, you need to know how this works. A producer, which some of you missed in your food web, which we still need to go over, I realize now. Producer is something that creates food. It's plants, things that use photosynthesis, all right? Consumers are eaters. Some of you did not know that in your assignments. Okay, so you need to understand about these. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's all about how they're all connected. Primary consumers are herbivores because they eat plants, and secondary consumers might be omnivores because they eat plants and animals, and then or carnivores obviously eat animals, and then tertiary consumers can feed on the secondary consumers. And you should have an idea about this from the trophic levels that you did in your assignment. Okay, you need to know this. This is in the test. Cellular respiration, a series of chemical reactions that break down sugar into chemical energy. So I'm trying to find out where that is in the text. Here it is. Here's the main one. It's on page 70. Cellular respiration is the series of reactions that occur in an organism's cell to release energy from sugar. Organisms need this energy to stay alive, grow, move, think, and carry out all vital bodily functions. When the energy-rich sugar, glucose, is broken down by cellular respiration, oxygen is consumed and carbon dioxide and water are produced as waste products. All living things undergo cellular respiration. So not just plants, not just animals, all living things do cellular respiration. Okay. Decomposers like fungi and microorganisms break things down. Here's the part about food webs. You need to have a general understanding of how food webs work. You should already know that because you went through your assignment, but it's there for you, information. There's not like key information, but you need to know that. And there's a picture of example of one, how everything's interconnected, things eat multiple things, all that kind of stuff. So here goes the definition of a food web. It's all there for you as it goes. Dichotomous keys, page 58. That's actually from this one. We did this just the other day. There's videos on it on previous lessons, but it's the idea. It's a tool used by scientists to help identify already named living things. So I think there might be a dichotomous key in the exam that you might have to know how to use, if memory serves. I haven't actually looked at it recently, but I believe there is one in there, or some question about understanding a dichotomous key. So remember, it's all about two choices, splitting things into this or this. Then again, this or this, until you narrow it down to the specific thing we're talking about. I think most of you have learnt that in class, but it's there for you anyway. Water pollution, page 76 to 77. That must be back in here. It's all about, littering and environment. It's basically how humans impact human impact and how we destroy things. There's water pollution. We understand that putting things like fertilizers, heavy metals, nitrates, phosphates from fertilizers, chemicals from plants, fuels, whatever, can get in the water supply and how that damages the planet. And it talks more about that there and the issues that you can imagine if you're defecting something's water source, it doesn't really work. Environments versus ecosystems. This one is something that kids get wrong a fair bit. I go back to 65. It says, and I won't read the big definition here, but you probably should. An environment is a unique set of non-living and living factors or conditions for a particular area and time. And you can tell us what living and non-living factors are. Non-living is salinity, which is the salt level of different water, pH, humidity, wind, soil, probably temperature. And then living factor is anything that's alive in that. That's what an environment is. But it says, where's the definition? Is there a definition for ecosystem? Yep, down here on page 67, it says an ecosystem is a community of organisms interacting with one another and with their environment. So it's all about the interaction and relationships between the individual things and the individual and the environment. So like, for example, some animals, some animals shed their fur when the temperature rises. That's an interaction between them and the environment, because the environment's temperature is changing, therefore and that's part of an ecosystem. It's all about how it's all interconnected. Environments are just about the stuff themselves in isolation, okay, not as working together as a collective group thing. Biological monitoring, page 80. I think there's one small question on this. There it is. It's basically the idea. So there it is, biological monitoring. It's the idea of checking, basically keeping an eye on, and I'm not going to read it all to you, but you should learn at least these headings, the relocation of species. Keeping an eye on animal populations so that we know whether they're going extinct, whether they're growing, whether they're going down. Do we need to protect them? Is there something in harm's way? Are we doing something to destroy their habitat so they can't survive? All that kind of stuff is what biological monitoring is all about. Introduced species. You guys know about this. Cane toads are like one of the worst ones around. So basically, when you bring a species in, and it's not just accidental too. If you purposely bring a species in and allow it to go into the environment, it can destroy the food web, or at least change the food web, because it can start eating things that weren't normally eaten, or things could get new food. There probably are situations where introduced species is a good thing, but I would argue most of the time not, because God made the ecosystems pretty good as they are, whereas we can mess with them. But sometimes maybe it does improve it, and sometimes they grow way too fast, which is a problem. Photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So we talked about cellular respiration, and we said how it's the breaking down of the sugar so we can actually get the energy out of it. Well, in short summary, but what's this page? 69. Photosynthesis from the beginning. You do need to understand that. I'm pretty sure everyone has a pretty basic understanding of what photosynthesis is. We've been talking about it since like year 2 or earlier, and many times since then. The sun is the basis of that, and it turns, what does it say here? Takes the water and the carbon dioxide from the air and converts into oxygen and sugar. The red energy from the sun, for this process some of it ends up stored as chemical energy in the sugar. So it's basically making sugar from sunlight and water effectively, or there you go. Convert light energy, carbon dioxide and water into glucose, which is sugar, or energy and water. So there you go. Binomial nomenclature. That's the naming of species. I don't even need to look at it for that, or I suppose I will for your sake, as I have been doing. But it's all about, if you see that name in the test, you say, what's binomial nomenclature? Well, it's all about why we name species what they're named. Okay? So it's all based off, as you can see it here now, their scientific names. So the scientific names is their genus, followed by their species, and that's how you write, that's what it is, and that's how you write the name of a species, a scientific name. Now, on that note, as it says here, there's a way to write it. So they need to all be in italics. The first word, the genus, must be capitalized, and then the second word is, and the species name, the last one, must be italicized but no capital letter. So you see it, H. sapiens, should be Homo sapiens first, but if you write it again in the same writing, you can just write H. sapiens like that. You need to know the way to write it abbreviated, otherwise you will not be getting all the questions right in the test. Then the last one you really need to look at is the species we already talked about, organisms that can have produce fertile offspring, and then characteristics of mammals, which you'll also find in this here. And basically it's presence of fur and feed young milk. Here it is. Mammalia possess hair, feed their young on milk. They also produce live offspring, which is not listed there, but they do.